Hello everyone and welcome back to a new Sprocket video. KV2 Enjoyer here. And today I was building a super heavy tank, a World War I super heavy tank. My idea was very simple. I had nice plans. The result was not what I was hoping for. However, the tank itself turned out to be pretty decent. Original idea was to build a tank with 4 turrets, but for space management and for the weight of the tank, I decided to make 3 turrets. So the first turret, the primary one, was on top of the tank, and it had the most important gun, so the primary weapon. The second turret was at the front, and it had to defend the tank from infantry and light tanks. And the last turret, placed on the back, was supposed to be a sort of turret to defend the back of the tank after crossing the trenches. However, and you will see it later, the third turret changed from a turret with a cannon to a turret with a rifle. Anyways, you can see in the video right now, as I'm watching too, that the design is not the best thing ever. Actually, I think this was one of the ugliest tanks I ever made, so I didn't like it. But I was trying to make an efficient tank. I was trying to make a tank that was not too heavy, so the mobility could be fine, and that there was enough space to place the turrets. But anyways, I was after working with the design of the whole, I started working with the tracks. I wanted to make it very simple because I didn't actually, it took me a long time to make this tank, actually 40 minutes, which is very impressive. But this is because at the beginning I had some struggle. There was some bug, I don't know why, it never happened to me. It was nothing serious, but I had some struggle with, for example, making the turrets, because I wanted to make them look nice, but not too complicated. Because for example, the first turret I was making here, I was trying to make something which could be considered as a nice turret. However, I didn't have much space to make it, so I tried a basic design. So at the back of the turret was circular, but the front was angled. It was straight and angled. And since I wanted to make it more realistic as possible, I tried even to make enough space for the gunner to stay in place inside the turret. So then I finally worked with the back turret. So here what happened. So basically the turret was very big. Actually, I wanted to make a big turret at the back, defending against infantry and tanks after crossing the trenches. However, I forgot that in Sprocket, when you place the turret, the part which had to be the back of the turret actually was pointing at the front. So that back part was the front of the turret. So I had problems later, but I had a very nice idea. Instead of placing a gun at the back turret, I placed some rifle. Because for me it made more sense, because it was supposed to be mostly against infantry. And as you can see here, I had struggles because I realized too late that the back of the turret was actually the front. So I just decided to stop working on the third turret and started working with making the primary turret. So this turret had to be the biggest one and big enough to place a big gun, and to at least have enough space for the crew to operate. So even though the designs of the turrets were very simple. I thought that it was good for this tank because as it's a World War I super heavy tank, it didn't need to be extremely well done. Actually, as you can see in the video, I was just making basic designs for the turrets and even for the guns, but this was in purpose, of course, because I think that it looked more realistic, since as this was, I could say, the first super heavy tank in this series. I had this in mind of making the tank, the first tanks with a basic design, and then evolve the designs through periods of times. So as you can see in the video, I placed the cannons. The primary cannon was the biggest one with APHE shells because it was supposed to be big enough to make area damage. The front turret, the small one, I was thinking of making a cannon that could shoot rapidly, but it didn't work properly, so it's just a small cannon, I can call it. After working with the cannons, I finally decorated the tank. So it took me, actually, I think this was the longest process, mostly for the rivets part, but you will see it later. So since I had a lot of space to work with, because for example the front, the angled part of the front had a lot of space to put decorations, but I didn't want to over exaggerate with the decorations and the utilities, because then it would the tank would look sort of a messy tank, like I just placed randomly the utilities. But that's not what I wanted to do. So I tried to place the utilities, the decorations, in a manner that would look realistic and that would make sense. I just had a worry. I was worrying about the weight of the tank, because if it was too heavy, the engine would not work properly. Since it's a first generation tank, the engine is not very powerful. But actually, at the end, I think that this was one of the most the one with the most mobility, actually, which surprised me for a super heavy tank. It was not the tank with the best mobility ever, but for its purpose as a super heavy tank, I think, and for the period of time, I think it was decent. And so you can see here, finally working with the rivets, which took me a lot of time because there was a lot of place. The tank was very big, and I don't think that this tank looked nice. It kind of looked ugly. I think the rivets made it look like I placed the utilities and the decorations, etc. Randomly, but I actually tried to make it look realistic, as the placement of the rivets had to make sense. So I don't know, leave a comment saying if you like the design of this tank or not. I personally don't think it's a nice tank. I think the best tank I made for now, for this period of time, was the YT2. And in fact, if you notice, the turret, the primary turret of this of the YT4 actually reminds the turret from the YT2, which that was in purpose actually. I tried to make a newer tank, but with a sort of looking best, like previous designs, etc. And I think this was one of the best moves at making this tank, because it really felt like this tank came from the YT series. I was almost done with decorating. As I said before, I was just worrying with the engine, the transmission, because the tank was very big actually, but I mean, it was very big, but actually the weight was not that bad. It was at the end, I think it was between 16 and 17 tons, which for a super heavy tank is very light. Since, for example, the YT3, I think, or the YT2, I don't remember which one, was something like 14 tons. So it's just 3 more tons, which is surprising for this size. If you compare it with human size, as you can see, there's a metal bar at the left of the tank right here. That is the size of an average human. So if you compare it with other tanks and with a super heavy tank, it doesn't look that big. Actually, it looks more of a heavy tank. At the end, I even tried, as you can see, I tried to use this tank to fight the YT1, the YT2, the YT3, and it went very good. I mean, it was supposed to be like this because it's a super heavy tank, so if you can see, notice the front armor was very good for this period of time. And against the YT3, the YT2, the YT1, it performed properly since I deflected most of the shots. Even though the guns were not, I think it's this one, the YT4, is a pretty balanced tank, since I noticed that the guns were not that strong to penetrate all of the tanks, for example the YT1. But anyways, this was everything. This was the YT4. I hope you enjoyed this video, and leave a like, subscribe, and even leave a comment to suggest me some new design I could make. The next video is a special one because it will be a sort of fight between the YT1, YT2, YT3 and YT4 to see which tank is better to complete the first campaign of this game, which is No Man's Land. So stay tuned and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!